My name is Jeff Moyer. I'm a 71-year-old disability rights advocate, writer, and musician. I've been involved with the ADA since before its inception, when we were working to establish the beginning of disability rights through the 504 regulations that were signed in 1977 following a 26-day sit-in at the San Francisco Federal Building. And I was the musician um, during that, although I did not live there like those heroes did. I came and went. I had a young child. My involvement with the ADA began when I heard Justin Dart speak in 1988. I was captivated by his soaring oratory and his unifying message. I introduced myself and asked if I might one day record his oratory. He said yes, and that began a friendship, which led to him inviting me to perform my song, the ADA Anthem, at the US Senate at the evening reception following the signing of the ADA at the White House in the morning. I then became involved as a member of the ADA Implementation Network and worked pro bono with people all over the country, helping ensure that the rights created by the ADA were realized in their lives. I began to go blind the summer of 1954, 2 weeks before my younger brother was born with a severe cognitive disability. And I think my realization of exclusion and such occurred for me as I was trying to see in first grade to read. And the materials were not accessible, but my teacher had to write out everything she wrote on the board and hand it to me separately. So it was my first realization of a need, and also the human intervention that met my needs. For my brother, it wasn't so easy, and he became the victim of extreme thuggery and childhood violence. And there were no schools that would accept him, not even the schools for kids with disabilities. And as a result, he was institutionalized when he was 9 years old. And that opened a chapter in my life that continues about understanding the needs of people with cognitive disabilities that are, thanks to the mighty Olmsted decision as part of the ADA, institutional life is considered a violation of civil rights. There's so much to that story. The ADA was a wonderful construct. However, in its construction, the decision was made by the Senate to exclude blindness. So every intersection in the country have curb cuts, but putting in accessible signals for people with visual disabilities is a local option. And I'm afraid that, and I know that for a fact, a dear friend of mine who's since passed was part of that whole process in Washington. Her name was Mary Jane Owen. And so the ADA is a great promise, but it's only realized through individual action when people apply the skills of advocacy to make sure that case by case it's realized. I was invited to the White House for the signing ceremony, and I got there early just by virtue of when my plane landed. So I was seated in the front row of the public section. There was a section for Congress and the administration, and then a section for the public. And when the president walked out, crossing the platform that had been constructed so that he could be seen by the crowd, or by the audience rather, of course, the congressional section rose as one in applause. And then there came people yelling, "We can't see, sit down." And Senator Kennedy was sitting right in front of me. And the woman who I met, who was sitting next to me, said that he whipped around and realized that they were blocking the view of people in wheelchairs. So there was this moment of collision of protocol and accessibility. And of course, people sat down. So it was the first time as the ADA was being signed that accessibility was realized by virtue of personal action. I think this is going to be a difficult time for realization of anything new concerning disability rights, because as our country is now wrestling with the economic outcome due to being shut down due to coronavirus, uh, I think we're going to be working real hard just to maintain the ground we have. But if I could have anything I wanted in terms of accessibility, it would be to reopen the ADA's mighty pages to include information and orientation access. And by that, I mean, if you're able to ambulate and you're blind, or you can't read by virtue of a cognitive disability, simple things like street crossings, bus numbers, signs in buildings are difficult, impossible to read if you can't see or can't read. This technology is called talking signs, and we came very close, although this is not required by the ADA, to see that realized as part of accessibility. However, the Republicans blocked the highway bill because they didn't want President Obama to have any victories. And we had a high priority amendment to that that would have made Washington, D.C. the first accessible city in the world for people who can't see or can't read. And when that happened, after 10 years of effort to get to that point, the little company went under. I had been a volunteer for it for 10 years. And with it came really a crushing defeat for that type of accessibility. Now, there certainly are many types of access through one cell phone if you're able to do that. But so many people aren't able or can't afford it that it makes accessibility something that is requires money. And the responsibility that the ADA made clear is that the responsibility for access is on behalf of the government. People have disabilities. Situations create handicaps. And I think that what the ADA did was open the possibility for people that employment was going to be open to them. In fact, we've lost ground since the ADA was passed because people hid behind it in terms of their response to hiring. And we need to make greater progress in terms of employment equity, as well as orientation and information access. The ADA, I just heard Robert Moses, who was one of the great heroes of the civil rights movement, the Freedom Summer 1964. And he said the Civil Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 are ideas, but they have yet to be fully realized. The same ADA, it's an idea, it's a construct, it's a mighty accomplishment, but to see it realized in our lives requires accessibility. And the decision addresses what I consider to be the most extreme need we have, and that is safe and accessible housing for people with cognitive disabilities. Institutions still exist, and even in the community, it takes advocates to make sure that people are able to live in safe and welcoming environments, even in their own home. I saw this who died of lung cancer because of being addicted to cigarettes in the institution when he was a child. But even in his last days, there was thievery and violence in the home, which is what, of course, we expected we would be getting away from when I was able to move him from the institution into a supported living home. So the greatest need is the needs of the least among us. And once again, we must listen to our heart intelligence, know what is right, and then find the way that one's rights can address that. The ADA, IDEA, 504, the Voting Rights Act, or the Fair Housing Act amendments. There are many laws in this quilted protections we have, but each of them require individual planning and each of them require advocacy. So all of you advocates, all of you young people there that are reading this or watching this, the torch is being passed. And it's important that younger generations now take on the mantle of continuing to move forward with our beloved, hard won disability rights, which are our civil rights. I hope that people are able to think more broadly about what we need as a community and pull as one in common direction, common cause for possibly the good of a few in the community, but we all benefit when we are lifted up through accessibility. I added music to our demonstration, to the signing of the ADA, to the commemoration of its 10th anniversary. Throughout, I've understood the power of music. It communicates to the wider community, it buoys us up as advocates, and it unites us. Martin Luther King Jr.'s widow said at the day of national service, the Martin Luther King holiday, that we have, when we were involved in the civil rights movement in the 60s, the disability rights movement in the 70s, it was music that helped us create a community because we sing together as one. And I do hope that music is not lost as a means to pull us together, because there's one thing we need now, it is to know that we are one as people with disabilities, that we all share the same histories of, in different ways, of discrimination and exclusion, and our rights are protected by the same laws. I do hope that culture continues binding us together and giving voice through its myriad ways so that people are able to express the reality and hope. Hope is what we need more than ever right now. And that is what the ADA provided, was a great beacon of hope.